Begin our class with prayer, please. And Alan, would you lead us in a short prayer?
Our Father in heaven, we're so thankful for the opportunity to be here this day. Thank you, Father, for your word that has been preserved through the ages and the opportunity we have to learn more about your will for us. We pray, Father, that you'll be with Brother Jenkins as he leads our minds and helps us to have a better understanding of the rights and customs of those who live before us. And we pray, Father, that you be with him and bless him as he teaches this class. Please be with us all and help us as we magnify your name and worship shortly. And we pray, Father, that you'll be with us this evening for your forgiveness, and that you'll also forgive us the sins we say. In Christ's name we pray.
Alan didn't know that was his closing bell. Good to see each of you. We're going to talk about making a living in Bible times, and there are lots of things we could talk about. We've already discussed a lot of them if we're considering agriculture, because we talked about those who were shepherds and those who kept cattle and those who took the wheat and the barley and turned it into bread, and who took the wool and turned it into yarn and to clothing and so on. So we've talked about a lot of the home things that individuals had to do in order to make a living. But there were works that people could do also in addition to that are very helpful in understanding a little bit better. And another big thing, try not to forget during our study, it's not just to teach you about life in Bible times. It is to help you, when you come across these illustrations, to understand better how they fit into the Bible. Because Jesus used them over and over. John the Baptist used them. Various writers of the Bible. Paul used a lot of them. We won't get to those, but that are very significant. We'll get to one or two tonight. So, we want to talk about the stonework. I think one of the things we think about is when David decided that he wanted a temple built. And he started gathering the materials, having Hiram of Tyre, which is now in Lebanon, having him to give materials or bring workers to come to Jerusalem. But then he told Solomon, his son, to do some of this work. But it says that he gave orders to gather the foreigners who were in the land of Israel. And he set stone cutters to hew out stones to build the house of God. So he knew apparently that these people could do the job, but they were the kind of people that were, I don't know if you'd call them immigrants or not, but that sounds like what they were. They've come from somewhere else. They're foreigners. And so we'll say, you're going to work on this project for us. If you're going to get fed, here's what you're going to be doing. And so that would happen. And we still occasionally see scenes of that sort. You have stonework here in Egypt. I've seen a number of different types of things. I've not seen this level of work for large pieces, but nonetheless, little things that people would do with stone and turn them into small items. So it does happen over and over. But they built these great, the pyramids. Let's just start with that. That was a lot of stone cutting. Most everybody's concerned with how did they get them up there. I don't know. Don't ask me that. But I could tell you probably. But nonetheless, what they did was very significant. And then we think also about the items like this Colossus. And there were so many of these. This is in the Valley of the Kings. And you see a guy there who's pecking away at a piece of stone, turning perhaps for repair of this ancient stone, you see, that is going to look better when it's finished. In fact, I think it already looks better than that. And in Aswan, which is a very significant place in the Bible, it's where the first cataract of the Nile River is located. And what that means is that beyond there, you can't take any boats. It means if you're going to have a boat there, when you come to the cataracts, did I show a picture of the cataracts earlier? It's just rocks and a little space to go through. So men who know it can take small boats. Let's say a boat that would be half as wide or 3/4 as wide as this row. And so they're able to go through there with a load of tourists and get them there safely and back safely and so on. But you can't, carry the large boats on the river, but like the cruise boats that people go on. So look at this obelisk that is there in the ground. It is 137 feet long. They never got it out. It weighs 1,152 tons. I don't know who weighed it. And then it has holes drilled every 2.5 feet. That's what they did in order to start the process. Then they put wooden pegs in there. And I'm sure there were wooden pegs that would absorb water and would swell. That's what they did. And so with enough of those there, this was able to split this away from the other stone, the stone that's on either side of it. And so then when that wood expanded, you see that separated the stone. Now that's only minor, we might think, to getting that thing out of there. And then eventually getting one of them to London and one of them to New York City and so on and so on. And then all over Egypt. So not all the smart people are living in Temple Terrace. That is for sure. And that's one of the things that travel teaches you, that people are smart in the ancient world just as people are smart today. And they made mistakes just as some people today make mistakes. Life is the same pretty much all the way through. And here is a better picture of the stone, the obelisk, there in the quarry. And you see it's already pointed up at the top. Everybody see where it is? I want you to be sure that you understand what I'm talking about. That's the wrong way to understand it. There, see how it's pointed at the top? And then going down, this is the way it will stand. But right now, it was still there, and it's still there till this day. So, amazing, isn't it? Goes back thousands of years, 10,000, 15,000 years, perhaps, 1,500 years rather. And in Beirut, not Beirut, but in Baalbek in Lebanon, they have the temples that have been built there. We showed you some of those on another occasion for some reason about the mountain ranges and that sort of thing. And that's, if you know him, that's David McClister. If you don't know him, it's still David McClister. That didn't change. But I wanted you to get an idea of the size of the person who is there. And that is the largest uncut stone that we know about in that region. It's 70 feet long, 13 feet high, 15 feet wide. So it's pretty big. And look over in the distance, you will see some minarets. And then over in that same place, you may see some columns over on the far left. And when we go to the entrance, you see these large stones that have been cut into columns. Now, sometimes some of those columns were one piece, sometimes. Other times you will see that they have been put together. And they're put together something like this. I've got some pictures of things that show that. There would be a hole cut in one piece, and then there would be a piece of stone, or sometimes it was metal, that will go in and the other one would fit on it. So it was a series of columns going up like this. But other times it's the entire thing. Should you go to Istanbul sometime, go to the, I can't even call the name of it. What's that thing that was built by Constantine? And great building there. The Hagia Sophia. And when you go in there, you will see columns. And they are like this, and they are, way up high. And they have come from great temples all over the world, different places they were brought in, including one from Ephesus, they say. And there may be one there, I don't recall if there's one there from Baalbek. Possibly that is the case as well. All right, so that's something that had to be done by people who were trained in stonework. Got it? And there's another illustration of the Temple of Jupiter. And a good portion there is still standing, but only on one side of the building. So that means a lot of it was destroyed, a lot was taken away, used other places, etc., etc. And here's another one of the stones, the large columns. That's Farrell Jenkins. And I was a little taller then, you know, as you get older, how it works, you get to doing like this. So I'm short. It'll happen to you too, Kelly. Quit talking. So at any rate, that's a pretty good sized piece of stone. And you can see the holes in it where there would be something that would help join two pieces together. So it's quite an amazing piece of work that they do. And when we look at the stone cutters and the masons, David said to Solomon, I mentioned this reference, he said, moreover, there are many workmen with you, stone cutters and masons of stone, and carpenters, and all men who are skillful in every kind of work. So everything needed in the building of Solomon's temple, they had the people that could do it. And so they built the temple out of it and other things that Solomon wanted to build. David had started the project. And today, even till now, in the Jerusalem region, Jerusalem area, the houses are built of native limestone. It is not brought in. You can't go to Georgia and get it. You've got to get it from here. And so that's rather interesting, isn't it? When you see a building of stone in Jerusalem, and it will mostly be that, it is from the area, from the region. And another place you might like to go, if you go to Jerusalem sometime, on the north side of the old city wall, there is a place that's called Solomon's Caverns, or something of the nature. It is not Solomon's, probably, but it is a place from which all of these stones, many of the stones used in connection with the building of the temple, were taken. And you go down in there, and it's like being in, well, if you ever go to what's that place in Mammoth Cave, if you ever go up there, the one thing you do not want to hear is what? You ought to see. You've never been up there and had that happen? You want to see Carl. You ought to see Carlsbad. Oh, yeah. Or if you go to Carlsbad, you ought to see Mammoth Cave. Well, when you go there, you will have seen the place they cut stone. I mean, you won't have anything to compare it with, I will suggest. And it's an amazing piece of work to look in there, to walk way back in there and to think, what if this fell? And all these houses are up above you, been built above you somewhere up there, you know. And believe it or not, there's a little interesting story about that. I wrote about it on the blog one time, so you can search for it by using this man's name. You know the name Barclay, B-A-R-C-L-A-Y? Not the guy who wrote a set of commentaries on the New Testament. The first missionary that the American Christian Missionary Society sent out was the son-in-law of Alexander Campbell, and his name was Barclay. I forget his first name. And so he went there as a medical missionary. And while he was working, he would, of course, do exploring. Well, everybody did. All the people who came from other countries to do this and that did exploring so they could learn about the country. And several of them wrote books about it, materials about it. And he went in there and he discovered that this indeed would lead on to the temple. In other words, all the way to the temple. Maybe not up into the temple precinct, but it would lead all the way there. And in addition to that, he discovered a gate that is, if you're looking at the western wall, you're looking here at the whole thing, and there's a section where women can go over here, and in the very corner of that there is a door. The door faces like this. But above the door there is a large lintel, and it sticks out here. Men are not allowed to go into that room that is there by where the door is. And I never have had the foresight to have a woman who can handle a camera well to go inside and make the pictures. But I've seen one like that. And this lintel starts out here, goes all the way through into the next room. And it is named Barclay window. And then from up above, you wouldn't want to do it today when they're having Ramadan and Easter. The Easter people are not a problem about this, but when you're having that and the Passover at the same time, it's not a good time to be there. But when you go there and you look at all of this, you look down and you can see Barclay Gate. In other words, from the inside of the Temple Mount precinct, the platform, you can see the gate that is named after him. So, you didn't know we're going to have a lesson in restoration history, did you? But that would be nice sometime, I suppose. So, look at what we have here. Stonecutters and masons. Where did Herod the Great do so much work? All over the country. I've just named a few of the places. He built the temple in Jerusalem. He started it in 19 BC. How long did they work on it? Do we have a hint in the New Testament? We do. We have a statement in the book of John. It says 46 years was this temple in building. So if you take the 46 and you take the 19, which we have from other sources, you see that if Jesus were born in 0, he was not. But at any rate, when you see this, you see that it's a big process that is involved there of the temple project. And then he built at Samaria. He built at Caesarea. He built a temple at Samaria. He built a temple, not a temple, but the whole city of Caesarea. We're talking about Caesarea Maritima on the coast where Cornelius lived. And that's a very amazing place. It's one of the big tourist spots because Israel is pretty smart with their tourism, so they have certain places, certain distances apart, that are fixed up for busloads of people to come. And so that's one of the busloads. One of the first places usually that tours will go is to be at a place like Caesarea. And you see work there, you need to realize Herod the Great did a lot of that work. We may have another picture that Herod did of something besides a temple. And then also at Masada, which is a place in the wilderness of Judea overlooking the Dead Sea and looking over toward Transjordan. And in Hebron, what did he build there? The tomb of Abraham he covered, and it was called the Cave of Machpelah. So this was something that he built. And there are other things. This is just a start of amazing things that he did. And this is impressive. And then also, here is the Temple Mount, an aerial picture of the area. And you will notice when we're talking here about the Temple Mount, we're talking about this square, triangle place. Starts right there, see, goes along here. This is the east side. That's the west side. This is the north. And down here's the south. And that is now the Dome of the Rock. And what's happening, if you know these things, see, and you look at the news, it's different than if you don't know anything about it. So you go up to the Temple Mount. All right, you get there, and then there's this outbreak. You wouldn't be allowed to go up there today. It's just they don't let that happen. But at any rate, you would go up there, and so you would say, what's going on up here? Well, we're having Ramadan. Well, if they're having Ramadan, then in this area right here, there might be something in the neighborhood. I'll show you where it would be, right here. Might be something in the neighborhood of 200,000 people there to worship. This is about 25 to 40 acres in size. It's an amazing place, built by Herod the Great. So they had the temple by Solomon, must have been very small compared to this. Later on, it was destroyed by the Babylonians. Then they rebuilt it, and they said, the old men said, it's just nothing compared to the one we had. And then, did you ever go back to your old school? Wasn't near as big as you thought. But they just said, oh, this is just, we just thought it was so grand in the other time, and we wish it were better now. And so here we are at this same place, and they rebuilt the temple at that time. There was actually another rebuilding in the intertestamental period, but it was more like repair. And then finally, Herod is the one who built this. What did he do? Well, it was a stone up there. That was Mount Moriah. See, like this? And he leveled all this off. It's open under there. He leveled all this off and put columns under it. And then they built colonnades all the way around it, built the buildings that are there, and that's what took 46 years. In fact, when that was said, it wasn't even finished. So there are some parts of it that were not finished even by the time the city was destroyed. But it was a marvelous build. So we'll come to that in Scripture also. There's the Western Wall where people are gathering. This is the west side. I don't know, I think I said the wrong thing a moment ago. And so here's the Western Wall, which is a small portion of the one side. And that's where people can go. And the idea of the Jews is this, that this is the place where we had our temple. And this is the closest we can get to the temple. And so they go to that place and they pray facing the wall. The men do, then another smaller place for women. And then there's another place that's been built for women as well. A lot of controversy over, their right to do this and that. This is the largest stone that we know of in the temple precinct. I have some of this, but not quite as good as that one. And so you have here one that is very large. The disciples of Jesus, when they came to the city, they said, look at these wonderful stones. Isn't that amazing? The Bible records that. The New Testament says, they said, look at these wonderful stones. They were from Galilee. There was no building like that in Galilee. It wasn't a 1.5-hour drive. It was a 5-day trip to go to Jerusalem. I've talked to people who live in Galilee now who've never been to the city of Jerusalem or who may have been one time only. You see, it's just, how many of you have been to Atlanta? Well, I know you flew through there. Well, is there anybody that hasn't been to Atlanta? Everybody's been to Atlanta? Wow! How many of you have been to Shreveport? Yeah, 3 people. Not as many. See, there are a lot of places we haven't been. And students used to ask me, is there any place you haven't been? And you know what my answer was? Yes, most places. And that's true. Most places I've not been. But there are lots of places to go and lots of places of interest, and I like to use what I learn at different places. Look at the size of it. It is the largest discovered. It's 44 plus feet long. It's 15 feet deep. That's up and down. It is, or that says high. That means back into the wall there. And it is 11, nearly 12 feet high. It is estimated to weigh 570 tons. And it's put together, all these stones, the other ones, the smaller ones, so on. All of these stones fit together with how much mortar? None. None. And they go way up high from the valley, and even for a protection over, up there, to protect the area around where the temple platform that Herod built. So that's an amazing piece of work. If you see this, you will never say at the pyramids, how did they do this? This is as amazing or more than the pyramids. Everybody knows about the pyramids. Not everybody knows about this. Now, here's the statement in John 2:20. It took 46 years to build this temple. Required many skilled workers. And so that's just from the model. And temple building was common throughout the Greco-Roman world. What happened here? Well, look at Paul's analogy in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 10 and following. And I had that here a moment ago. It says in this text, first verse, well, no, I don't have that verse there. Let's start at verse 10 probably. And Paul talks about himself being a wise master builder. And he says in verse 10, according to the grace of God given to me, like a skilled master builder, I laid a foundation. And someone else built upon it. And someone else is building upon it. I've already read that. Let each one take care how he builds upon it. How he builds upon it. For no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now, if anyone builds on the foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each one's work will become manifest, for the day will disclose it. In other words, when the fire comes, when the strong wind comes, what's going to happen to those that are made of wood or straw? Or can you imagine making it of straw? But his point is what? If you just put a little bit into your life as a Christian, you're not going to get much out of it. It may not last. So that's what he's using to teach. He's using the illustration of the great buildings that were in Greece, at Corinth in particular, to tell them about that. And so the fire will test what sort of work each one has done. If the work that anyone has built on the foundation survives, he will receive a reward. If anyone's work is burned up, he will suffer loss, though he himself will be saved, but only through fire. Everybody will be tested. And that's the point that he's making. So he uses that analogy, you see, from the building of the temples. So I've got some examples from Greece that you well know. There's the Parthenon in Athens. I did that in a better picture, and I left it out, or didn't have it in the right place. So the Parthenon looks better than that. And then here's one that I like at Corinth, which is where he was writing. And he's the wise master builder. So he writes the Corinthians, think about your temples here. Think about the temple of Apollo. What is it like? Well, the temple of Apollo, that's just the foundation. I'm on the little street, the Lycaean road that goes into the city. I'm looking over this direction. I see the temple, then the foundation. And then way up there's somebody standing. That's where the platform for the temple is. So you can see what a foundation is made for this. And what did Jesus do in his teaching? Just a very simple illustration. If a man builds on the sand, then the weather comes and what? Washes it all away. But if he builds on the rock, then it's going to survive. So even more so, you think about a building like this. And there's a picture of the Temple of Apollo that you can see some idea by the person up there, 2 or 3 people maybe. You can see the size of that. In the distance there is Acrocorinth. That's the mount overlooking the city of Corinth. And there were temples up there as well as temples on the level of the sea. And cities and housing also were built by people like that. I have a little section here on the city of David, and some have asked me about that, a question or two regarding that. And so I hope I can make it clear. And I did, in fact, leave out the ones that I wanted to be using. I had all this labeled. And I was asked about the city of David. This may be in here, but I may not have gotten it. But what you're looking at there is on the slope that goes from the city of David down into the Kedron Valley. Now, remember, the city of David is going to be south of the Temple Mount. The way it's going to work is you're going to have the Temple Mount going south, then you're going to have the Ophel. That's a lowering place that goes down like this, and then this keeps sloping all the way down to the Kedron Valley, which curves down there, meets the Hinnom Valley. And as you go down, you can see that there are houses that are built on the slope. All right, so this one is one that was uncovered over a period of about 20 years by a man who was called Yigal Shiloh, spelled just like we pronounce Shiloh. Shiloh was his name, and he died at age approximately 50. I believe it was exactly 50 when he died. And so he did not quite finish his work, and for sure he didn't write all of the reports that one might have expected to come from this work. But here's some things that were found. The stones that you see there is called the stepped stone structure. It appears that what that is doing is holding up, making sure that what's up above doesn't collapse. So you've got to have something there to hold. And then they found things such as a house. You see the little house? It had a name inscribed on a stone in it. And that was Ahiel. And so Ahiel lived there with his family, perhaps. And you just had to have 3 walls that way. That's pretty neat, isn't it? A lot of people. At Jericho, people built against the wall. So they have 3 walls, and then one good one, real big, solid one that's been built there. And there is a room that is called the burnt room. They found a toilet also. And I noticed it in one of the pictures I was looking at, and I didn't pull it out, but they had literally found the seat of a toilet. Just one big piece of stonework. And then they cut so that you could use it. Amazing. And when you look at the burnt room, what happened down there? Well, you know, in those days, and I should have put in pictures of this, there are just so many things I could put in. And it's so hard. Do you know what a rubber stamp is? Everybody knows. Do you know what a notary seal is? All right. So, when you take a notary seal and you make an impression, can you read the impression? Can you read it? Yeah. If you tried to read the seal, is it easy or difficult? It might be difficult. If you're accustomed to reading everything backwards, it's okay. But it might be difficult because it's negative. It is not positive. Hold it in a mirror and you'll be able to read it. All right. So now if we have a seal, that seal is going to make an impression, right? The impression is going to be a positive. We want it to be. This is negative, it's going to be a positive. All right, so now we've got these seals. What were the seals on? Oh, if you had a document, you rolled up the document. Jeremiah did this. He was told to write this deed. He was told to roll it up. He was told to put a seal on it. Remember that? He bought a piece of land. This was his deed. And so it has a seal on it. It has an impression on it. Now, when they open this up, when there's a fire, when the Romans come, when the Babylonians come, that's what happened first. When the Babylonians come and they burn the city, what's going to happen to this deed? going to be burned up. What happened to what's the seal made of? Not wax. It's made of clay. Yeah, good thought though. A lot of things are. That's what we would do if we had a gift card to send out. But it's made of stone. That's not right. What's it made of? Clay. It's made of clay. And so then we have the clay, and it has the impression in it. Okay? So we've got the impression. All right? Now, when you start reading the impression, you don't have the seal. You have the impression. If the impression exists, what about the seal? I'm asking the basic question, who made God? All right? What? It means there was a seal. If you've got the impression, there was a seal. If we've got a world, that's what Hebrews argues. If we've got a world, there was a God. Because man can't do that. So that's the argument made in the book of Hebrews, that every house is built by someone, and he who built all things is God. All right, so now we look at these. So there's just 50 or so of these seals that were found. And many of them name characters that we know in the Bible. And some of them name characters, the rest of them usually name characters that are typical of Jewish names at the time. See? So they all fit into that particular period of time. All right, so we have this new place that we're talking about, and that's the burnt room. The seals are there, but the documents are gone. So it's worthwhile anyway. And there were other things that were found, of course, always other things that are going to be found. So there's the house of Ahiel that we looked at a moment ago. And then we'll maybe get more about that later, maybe in the next lesson. We'll have one more on this, probably. And then streets had to be built. What are we discussing tonight? Stonework. Have any of you seen any big trees? Only the cedars of Lebanon, and what? They weren't in Israel. They didn't have those. So they had to use what they had, and what did they have? Stone and clay. So that's what they used. Now, they have stone here at Jerash in Gilead. This is now in Jordan, Jerash, Jordan. And that'd be a good name. See, if I ever become an entertainer, I'll go to Jerash, Jordan. That would be a good name. I hadn't thought about that before. And so that one is at Jerash. I want you to notice there. That street, if it's in the Roman world, and it was built in the days of Hadrian, early 2nd century. And that street is what's the street? What's the main street through a Roman town? North-south? Spell it out. C-A-R-D. Can anybody finish it? C-A-R-D. What? Cardo. Yeah, the Cardo. And then what's the cross street, the east-west street? The Decumanus. Now, I told you that to tell you this. When the Romans came and destroyed Jerusalem, then what happened? What's good as a destroyed city? What's good if you destroy the whole of the Ukraine? I've been in some of those buildings that I saw at the first of the war. And they're gone. What good is that to anybody? Because now what do you have to do? Rebuild it. But you build it like you want it. So the Romans rebuilt Jerusalem. They called the city then, in 135 AD, that's a long time after the destruction in AD 70, but they called it Aelia Capitolina. And it has the Cardo, and it had a Decumanus. And you can walk those streets because it's like a Roman city. If you look at the Madaba map, which is in Jordan, that was left in a church building where they put a map in about the early 600s, and you look at that map, you will see that it shows the Cardo and the Decumanus. So you can walk them yourself. In fact, it's mostly a tourist area walking through the Cardo, and a very nice place to visit. All right, now there's a nice Roman street in Laodicea. That one is looking to the east. And how do I know it's looking east? Because I was there. I made the picture. No, that's not the reason. I can know because of the mountain over there. That's over where there's a city called Colossae. Right? So the city of Colossae is at the base of Mount Cadmus. It's a few miles away. And here we are. So this is called Asia Street. Asia Street. Meaning what? No, I'm sorry, I got the wrong word. Syria Street. Because we have Syria, the whole of Palestine was a Syrian province. So it's all called Syria. Even in the New Testament you have Syria. Then we come to city walls and gates that are going to be there. What is the importance of the gate that is built in a city of Bible times? Well, Lot was sitting in the gate when visitors came. And also, Abraham agrees to buy property from the Hittites. Where does he make that agreement? The courthouse? No, in the gate of the city. Why do you do things in the gate of the city? What do you need if you're going to buy property? What do you need? How many people do you take with you? What? Yeah, you got to have witnesses. Everybody requires witnesses. Even the Hittites required that. And so where does he go to talk to these people? The gate of the city. Which means what? You've always got some guys hanging around who can witness a signature. May not be reliable, but nonetheless you can do that. And then there's another case. Abner took some people into the middle of the gate to speak to him. Took a guy in, and while he had him in the middle of the gate, like I'm in the middle of the door, and you're going to come right here and stab me? I don't think so. So, I trust you. No, not this. What is the gate? Oh, it's much larger than that. So let's look quickly so we'll get some of these. Here are other examples of the gate. When Boaz wanted to marry Ruth, where did he go? You remember he had to make a deal because find out if any of her relatives who would be required by the law of Moses to marry her. And so he had to go there. So he went to the gate. He would have a witness to what's going on. And Nehemiah, this is, I'm out of place, but let me see. All right, let's skip that one. That's the gate. That's the gate at Megiddo. And I showed you before regarding the woodwork that's in there, so to help with there's a shock from an earthquake. And then look at that. That is the gate of Hazor. I'm looking down on it right here. And when we look down on this, here's what we see. You see, that's the way you walk into the city. This is only a few feet high, but these were probably 15 feet high. When you come in, you can see an entrance here. You can see there's probably an entrance here. There's an entrance here, entrance here. How many chambers are in this gate? No, there's 6. See, there's 6, 3 on each side. That's a 6-chamber street. Some are 4-chamber streets. You could have a 2-chamber street, but not likely. So there are a lot of these from the Bible world that have been excavated. And when you need to go to the gate for selling something, buying something, making a deal, that's where you go. right there at the entrance of the city. So that's the gate of the city. Gate at Hazor, look at this one. This is the gate at Gezer. You are inside the city looking out. That's a drain which will be covered over for people to walk on it. But on each side, how many chambers do we have? 2 on each side. So it's a what chambered? 4-chamber. So it's a 4-chambered, see, there. And that's another view of it. You can see that you have that, and so on. So we will stop there, and we'll pick up on Sunday, and then we only have how many lessons? 4, 3 after this. Is that correct? 3 after this. Wow. Somebody said, I thought it would never end. It's good to see each of you.